What if your pain is part of God's plan? What if the betrayal you're facing, the silence you're experiencing, isn't proof that God has abandoned you, but evidence that He's preparing you? You've heard of Joseph, the man who rose to power in Egypt. But most people overlook the shocking truth of how he got there. His life is not just about dreams and greatness. It's about pits, prisons, betrayal, silence, and an unshakable faith in a God who didn't always speak, but was always working. In the silence, and God was shaping him. In the injustice, and God was positioning him. And in the delay, and God was aligning generations to be saved. If you've ever asked, "Where is God in my suffering?" stay with me, because this story might just change how you see your darkest season. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, but to Jacob, he was everything. The son of his old age, the firstborn of his beloved wife Rachel. To show his affection, Jacob gave Joseph a robe, a coat of many colors. This wasn't just a gift, it was a symbol of favor, of inheritance, of identity. But love often invites jealousy, and Joseph's brothers, older, stronger, and deeply resentful, couldn't stand the sight of him. Then came the dreams, visions from God. In one, Joseph saw sheaves of grain bowing to his. In another, even the sun, moon, and stars bowed before him. To Joseph, it was a confirmation. God had a purpose for his life. To his brothers, it was insulting. "You think you'll reign over us?" And with every dream, their hatred grew deeper. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers in the field. But when they saw him approaching in his colorful robe, they didn't see a brother. They saw a threat. "Here comes the dreamer," they said. They plotted to kill him. Yes, his own blood, not strangers, not enemies. His own brothers conspired to take his life, but one of them, Reuben, intervened. Instead of death, they stripped him of his robe and threw him into a pit, a dry, empty well. No water, no food, no hope. Imagine Joseph sitting there, the boy with dreams of greatness, now in a hole in the ground, completely abandoned. "God, what happened to the dreams? Did I hear you wrong?" But it didn't end there. As Joseph sat in silence, a caravan approached. Ishmaelite traders, slave merchants, heading to Egypt. And his brothers, his own family, went and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. No farewell, no apology, just business. In ancient times, slavery was a harsh, brutal system. Joseph would have been bound in ropes or chains, marched for days across deserts. At markets, slaves were inspected like livestock, their muscles poked, their mouths examined, their value assigned. They were stripped of their names, their homes, their identity. They became property, tools, not people. This was the fate of Joseph, the beloved son, the dreamer. Now a nameless slave in a foreign land. And in all this, God was silent. Joseph was sold into the house of Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. And once again, Joseph rose. Why? Because God was with him. Even in slavery, Joseph worked with integrity and excellence. Potiphar noticed and promoted him. But then came another betrayal. Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of something he didn't do. And just like that, he was thrown into prison. Another injustice, another fall. He had done everything right and was still punished. And there in prison, Joseph remained for years. He helped others, he interpreted dreams. But when he asked someone to remember him before Pharaoh, they forgot. Forgotten by man, but not by God. Still the silence remained. Have you ever felt that? When you're doing everything right, but everything seems to go wrong? That's where Joseph lived. In silence, in injustice, in a slow, invisible process. Then one day, the silence broke. Pharaoh had a dream, a disturbing one. None of his magicians or wise men could explain it. And suddenly, someone remembered. Joseph was brought out of the dungeon. He stood before the most powerful man in the world, and God spoke through him. Joseph interpreted the dream with clarity, wisdom, and humility, and in a moment, everything changed. From prisoner to prime minister, from forgotten to ruler over all Egypt. Now here's the shocking truth. If Joseph hadn't been sold, he never would have reached Egypt. If he hadn't been falsely accused, he wouldn't have entered Pharaoh's prison. If he hadn't been forgotten, he wouldn't have been there when Pharaoh needed him. Every setback was a setup. Every delay was a divine alignment. God wasn't punishing Joseph. He was preparing him, because a famine was coming, one that would stretch across nations. And Jacob, Joseph's father, would send his sons to Egypt to buy grain. And who would they find in charge? Joseph. If Joseph had not gone through the pit, the prison, the betrayal, the entire family of Israel would have died in the famine. The nation that would birth the Messiah would have perished. Have you ever wondered, what if Joseph gave up in the pit? What if he stopped trusting God in the prison? What if he let bitterness harden his heart? Would he have still seen the palace? Joseph didn't know the ending, but he chose to trust even when he couldn't trace God. And because of that, he didn't just rise, he rescued nations. Maybe you feel like Joseph today. Betrayed, forgotten, silenced, confused. You had a dream. And now you're in a place that looks nothing like it. But listen closely. Silence is not absence. Delay is not denial. And what the enemy meant for evil, God is still turning for good. Joseph said to his brothers, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, to save many lives." Genesis 50:20. Don't quit in the pit. Don't give up in the prison, because the palace is still part of your story. Your job is to keep trusting. Even when God is silent, he is still present. If Joseph's story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with someone who needs hope. Like this video if you believe God is working behind the scenes. Subscribe for more stories that show how God turns pain into purpose, no matter what you're facing. God hasn't forgotten you. He's preparing you. Just like Joseph, your breakthrough is being built in silence.